Day 2, Part 4.
The next project that we're going to look at is this lovely floral, or extract thereof, that was sent to me by a friend, and I have her permission to use it. She had drawn this, and then when she went to auto trace it in Illustrator, she discovered that these lines broke up and she was not getting a smooth line. This becomes then a perfect example of this technique that I've been showing you. So I run the action, fix basic scan, it's done, double click to get the levels, and I'm going to bring the white all the way up, and I'm going to bring the black all the way in because you can see there are no blacks here. By the time I get a good black, white, and strong line here, you'll notice that the black and white points are very, very close to one another. That does not give me any room at all for the Gaussian blur. So there's another way of dealing with this. And you might take it as a general rule. When in doubt, and you can't figure out how to do something with the layers you've got, select both of them and choose Convert to Smart Object. Now we have a brand new object, and even though its layers are showing you a histogram that's really looking very, very strange, it's perfect because we can add a Gaussian blur to it. I have the histogram up here so that you can see exactly what's happening when we blur this. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Notice that at this point you are still seeing lines sticking up, but you do have more of a range of values. So let's see where we go. Well, 9.2 is obviously too high. Let's bring it down. I don't want these to break up, and I don't want them to get overly fuzzy. So they're still solid. Let's try it at 3.9 and see what happens. Okay, now that you've gotten to a value that looks like it works, just click OK. We can always go back and change that if it doesn't work for us. Now we're going to add levels. So click to add the levels layer, and let's see what happens this time. Now I can bring, remember the purpose of this levels layer is to make the lines both thick and smooth and dark. So we're going to inch these towards each other. At this point, notice this line is breaking up again. So the black is too far. Let's push it. And that doesn't work either. And yet this line is still not smooth enough. It could be that the Gaussian blur was too much for it. Let's see what happens if I open the Gaussian blur dialog box again and bring this down. Yes, that is ever so much better. So around 2.6 down to about 2.1, any of those values will give me a nice, crisp, sharp line. Click OK. And now I can create my layer mask. Let's go into the Channels panel and Control or Command click to load the values. Come back into the Layers panel and Alt or Option click and get a layer mask. Now we can do some cleanup in the layer mask. With the brush, and fairly hard-edged brush. You can change the hardness to make it a little bit less hard if your edges seem to need that. And maybe a slightly smaller brush. Okay. And black paint in the layer mask. And I can edit this. I can also get rid of, there were some dots floating around here. Oh yes, up here. That's an easy one, just eradicate it. Sometimes it's actually easier to look at the layer mask itself, where you can see odd, soft shades that you know you don't want to be there. This one, because it's not in the original, we can try adding more white, but I don't know whether we are going to have to add that on another layer. We can see what happens there. We know that these little spots should be gone, so we can just touch them up and get rid of them. I will give you a short tutorial in your written work about how I am resizing the brush on the fly. So you can look through the whole thing and see where else it needs a little spot of care here and there. And when you're done, click back to your image. At this point, if you wish, you can start adding the color into the image. I'm just going to do a fast one or two layer mask, color fill layers. And here's solid color fill. You can see that really needs to expand a lot more. And give it a pretty pink maybe. Bring it down below. Now, do you see what I did differently than I did before? I did not make this levels layer part of the layer masked image. So levels is modifying everything. If I go up here and say create clipping mask, now we have the color back that we expected. I can also just go in here and say, okay, convert it to a smart object and have done with it. So I've got my smart object again, which allowed us, as we did before, if you want to add a color overlay and I want all of the outlines to be a dark green, I can do that. Then I can come back in here, double click, go to my mask edge, shift the edge to 100, shift the contrast to 100, and shift my feather until I no longer see a gap. Click OK and continue on my way to add those.